I remember the first morning I started to doubt the taste of my own tea. It was a Sunday, quiet and soft, sunlight slipping through the lace curtains like it always had. My hands were shaking a little, as they do sometimes now. But that morning, the tremor wasn't from age. It was from something colder, something that curled deep inside my stomach and whispered, "Something's wrong." You know that moment when you feel danger before you can name it? The tea was sweet, too sweet, and the smell, just slightly off, like metal or medicine. I looked up and my granddaughter Emily was standing by the counter, smiling that polite, distant smile she'd learned from her mother. "Drink it while it's hot, Grandma," she said. I smiled back, the way old women are expected to smile, grateful, harmless, simple. And then I took the smallest sip of my life. That day I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was a new brand of sugar. Maybe Emily had simply mismeasured. But deep inside, where the truth hides before it's ready to be spoken, I already knew. My grandsons didn't visit anymore, except when they wanted something. My own son barely called. But Emily and her brother Jack, they came every day, so attentive, so patient, always bringing food, pills, stories about how they worried for me living alone. Love shouldn't taste like fear, yet every visit left me weaker, sleepier, less myself. I used to be a nurse 50 years ago. You don't forget the signs. Heavy eyelids, shallow breathing, confusion that comes in waves, the way your body starts to feel borrowed. That's what I was feeling, and the timing was perfect. Every symptom bloomed within an hour of tea. My tea. The one they insisted on preparing for me because, "You've done enough, Grandma. Let us take care of you." I wanted to believe them. God, I wanted to. Emily with her kind eyes, Jack with that polite tone, calling me sweet old lady, like it was a nickname instead of a warning. But the body tells the truth, even when the heart doesn't want to hear it. And my body was screaming. The dizziness started 2 weeks ago. The first time I almost fell in the kitchen, Jack caught me. "You've got to rest more, Grandma," he said, setting me in the armchair, slipping a blanket over my knees. He even kissed my forehead. I remember thinking, how gentle, how thoughtful. And yet, when I looked at his hands, I saw him check the clock, like a nurse waiting for a dose to work. The pills were another thing. My medicine had always been kept neatly in the cupboard, labeled by day. Suddenly, Emily offered to help organize. She said the bottles looked confusing, that I could mix things up and hurt myself. She started handing them to me each morning. I trusted her. But I began to notice the labels changing, dosages written in a different pen, the smell of pills slightly bitter, not like before. One night I woke to the sound of whispering outside my room. I stayed still, breathing slow. Jack's voice was low, careful. "How long do you think it'll take?" And Emily whispered back, "The doctor said it depends on the dosage. Maybe a few weeks." The doctor. That word sliced through me like a knife. What doctor? I'd canceled my appointments months ago. They said my heart was fine, just age catching up. But now there was another doctor. One who knew about dosage. I pressed my hand to my chest, forcing myself to stay silent. My heart was hammering like a trapped bird. In the morning, I acted normal. I even thanked Emily for the tea, though I could barely swallow it. Then, while she cleaned the kitchen, I poured half the cup into the potted plant by the window. The geranium wilted by evening. That was the moment the fear turned to certainty. For 2 days, I played the part. The confused old lady, the grateful grandmother. I let them feed me, medicate me, fuss over me. Inside, I was watching, memorizing. They never saw me slip the pills into my sleeve or pour the tea into the sink. And slowly, the fog in my mind began to clear. My thoughts sharpened like glass. I found the phone numbers they didn't want me to have. My old friend Martha from church, my lawyer, even Dr. Reeves, my real doctor. I hid the list under the tablecloth. If something happened to me, someone would know where to start. But I wasn't ready to die quietly. No, not yet. The worst part was pretending not to notice the way they'd already started dividing my life between them. Emily wanted my jewelry, the gold locket my husband gave me before the war. Jack wanted the house, of course. He'd already shown real estate photos to someone on his phone, thinking I didn't see. They whispered about assisted living, about next steps, and estate planning. My estate. My life. Like I was already gone. I spent that night sitting in the dark, the old grandfather clock ticking in the hall. Every sound in the house felt louder, the creak of the stairs, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint scratching of mice in the walls. I held Martha's recipe book in my lap, the one with her handwriting faded from decades of use. I ran my fingers over the pages, and for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I was angry. They thought I was weak. They thought grief and age had made me soft. But grief can also turn into something sharp, something that cuts both ways. My husband used to say, "Never underestimate an old woman who has nothing left to lose." I smiled in the dark. He'd be proud. So tomorrow I'll let them bring me my tea again. I'll sip it, pretend to get sleepy, and when they think I'm drifting off, I'll listen. Because the only thing more dangerous than poison in a cup is a grandmother who's learned the taste of deceit. And if my plan works, if what I'm preparing tonight goes the way I think it will, by the end of this week, someone else will be the one coughing, dizzy, and desperate for air. They wanted to watch me fade quietly. They're about to watch me wake up instead. The next morning, I lay still in bed, long after dawn, listening to the soft thud of footsteps in the hallway. Emily always moved first, slippers dragging lightly, her phone already in her hand. She thought I didn't notice how she recorded things. Photos of my pill bottles, videos of my confused moments. She was building a story for later, something to show people when I was gone. "Poor Grandma was declining," she'd say. "We did everything we could." But I was wide awake, sharper than I'd been in months. I'd prepared the night before, the teacup I'd used yesterday. I rinsed it carefully and sealed it in a zip bag, the kind I used to freeze soup. Years of nursing left me with habits others call paranoia. I'd even kept an old testing kit from my hospital days for metals and contaminants in water. The strips were expired, but they'd still change color if something strong was in the residue. I waited until Emily left for her yoga class, then took the bag from my dresser. I dipped a strip into the dried tea ring. It turned blue-green, copper or arsenic. My stomach clenched, but not from fear. Finally, proof. That afternoon, I called the pharmacy under a false pretense, asking about my prescriptions. "Mrs. Johnson, you haven't refilled anything since March," the clerk said. "Are you sure you're taking your meds?" Oh, I was taking something all right, just not what they said it was. When Emily and Jack came home that evening, arms full of groceries and smiles fake as plastic flowers, I was sitting in my armchair with my rosary beads in hand. "You look better today," Emily said, setting a casserole on the counter. "Must be your good cooking," I replied. My voice came out steady, even warm. Jack grinned, a little too wide. "See? We told you living with us would be good for you." Living with them. That was the joke. The house had always been mine. They'd moved in last winter to help out after my husband passed, but lately they'd started talking about the place like it belonged to them. Jack had mentioned renovating. Emily talked about my garden, and I heard the words they thought I didn't. "Once she's gone, we can sell it and move closer to the city." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Thank you. That night, I didn't pour my tea down the drain. I poured it into a small glass jar and hid it behind the flour canister. Later, when they were asleep, I crept into the kitchen, barefoot and silent. The old floorboards knew my weight too well. I stepped only where I remembered them quiet. The moonlight through the window turned the room ghostly pale. I unscrewed the jar, took another strip and dipped it in. The color deepened, spreading like ink through water, blue-green again. My heart pounded. I wasn't crazy. They were really doing it. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the dark window, seeing only my reflection. A thin old woman, with eyes that didn't blink. "You can't fight them," I heard my late husband's voice in my head. "They're young. They're greedy. They'll bury you." Maybe so, but he forgot one thing. I know how to bury things too. Over the next few days, I started my counterattack. Quietly, patiently. I switched pills in their bottles, harmless vitamins in place of what they gave me. I saved every cup, every spoon, labeling them with masking tape and dates. My kitchen looked like a small lab by the end of the week. I hid the evidence in the attic, behind old Christmas decorations. They never went up there. When Jack asked me one morning if I'd considered rewriting my will, just to make things easier later, I smiled so gently he almost relaxed. "That's a good idea, dear," I said. "Maybe we can talk to my lawyer next week." The word lawyer made him flinch, almost imperceptibly. "No need to rush, Grandma. Just thought it might help us take care of things properly." "Oh, I'll take care of things," I murmured. He didn't catch the tone. Emily, meanwhile, grew more confident. She started insisting I eat special herbal soup she'd made herself. I pretended to swallow, then poured it into a thermos under the table when she wasn't looking. By Friday, my thermos was half full of their kindness. That evening, I made a call from the landline in my bedroom, the one they never checked because they thought I'd forgotten how to use it. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Dr. Reeves," the familiar voice answered. "It's Josephine," I said softly. "I need a favor." Quietly. 2 days later, he came under the pretext of a routine checkup. Emily hovered nearby, smiling like a nurse in a commercial. But Dr. Reeves knew me. He'd delivered my children. When she left the room to answer a phone call, he leaned close and whispered, "What's really going on, Joe?" I handed him the sealed jar. "Test this. Don't put my name on it. Just tell me what's in it." He nodded once. "You think they're—" "I don't think," I said. "I know." When Emily came back, I was back in character, fragile, forgetful, grateful. "How's her blood pressure?" she asked, too eager. "Stable," he said, looking at me with eyes that understood everything. "Very stable. She's stronger than she looks." That night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: power. It sat in my chest like a glowing coal, small but alive. 2 days later, Dr. Reeves called. "It's arsenic, Joe. Small doses, very consistent. Whoever's giving it knows exactly what they're doing." My hand didn't even shake. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That's all I needed to hear." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to finish my tea," I said, "and let them finish theirs." After that, everything changed. I stopped resisting. I smiled more. I told Emily how grateful I was. I even offered to cook dinner one night, just to feel useful again. She agreed, delighted. They didn't know I'd switched the sugar jars. They didn't know the tea leaves they'd been using for weeks were replaced with my own blend. They didn't know I'd written a note to Dr. Reeves and my lawyer, sealed in an envelope by my bedside, explaining everything. When Sunday came, the same day of the week this nightmare began, I made them dinner: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and that sweet, perfect tea. They watched me, pleased with themselves, sipping slowly. I sipped too, pretending to enjoy it. Jack laughed, a sound that suddenly felt hollow. "You know, Grandma, we should do this more often." "Oh, I think we will," I said. My voice sounded almost kind, because soon someone in this house was going to start feeling the same weakness I'd felt: the dizziness, the sleepiness, the heartbeat slowing just a little each night. And when they did, I'd be right here, smiling, patient, pouring another cup. They taught me what poison tastes like. Now they're about to learn what justice does. It started with Jack complaining about headaches. At first, he brushed it off. "Too much screen time," he said, rubbing his temples while scrolling through his phone. But I saw the sheen of sweat along his hairline, the way his pupils didn't quite focus. I'd seen that look before, years ago, when a patient had mistaken pesticide for cough syrup. "Drink some tea," I told him sweetly, sliding the cup toward him. "It always helps me." He hesitated, then smiled. that same condescending curve of the mouth he used whenever he thought I was trying to feel useful. "Sure, Grandma. If it makes you happy?" It did, more than he could imagine. Emily noticed next. She'd been humming all morning, packaging skincare boxes for her little online shop, when her humming broke into a cough, then two, then three. "You okay, dear?" I asked. "I'm fine," she said, clutching the counter, trying to steady herself. "Just dizzy. Must be the heat." "Yes," I said softly, "the heat." That evening, I sat in my armchair with my knitting, pretending not to watch as they picked at their dinner. They were both pale, quiet. Jack didn't finish his soup. Emily pushed her plate away and went to bed early. I waited until I heard their door close, then took out my notebook. Day 4. Initial symptoms visible: reduced appetite, muscle fatigue, dizziness. The handwriting was calm, measured. It almost frightened me how steady my hand had become. I wasn't cruel by nature. God knows I'd spent my life healing people, not harming them. But healing and justice sometimes walk the same road, don't they? When you've been poisoned, by family, by betrayal, the only cure is truth. And truth, like arsenic, must be delivered carefully. 2 days later, Emily called the doctor. Not mine, of course. Some young man she'd found online. He diagnosed viral exhaustion, told them to rest and drink fluids. I nearly laughed out loud when he said, "and avoid stress." If only he knew. Jack started missing work calls. His voice got hoarse and his hands trembled when he tried to pour coffee. He didn't want me to see, but I noticed everything. His confidence was fading, replaced by confusion. The same fog they'd watched grow in me. I heard them whispering one night behind their door. "What if she's contagious?" Emily hissed. "She's not sick, Em. She's ancient," Jack muttered. "She probably caught something and passed it to us." I smiled in the dark. Oh, if only that were true. The next morning, I served breakfast as usual: oatmeal, fruit, and tea. Jack didn't touch it. Emily just stared into her cup. "You should eat," I said softly. "You'll need your strength." She looked up at me, eyes rimmed red, hair unbrushed, her beauty crumbling under the weight of unease. "Grandma," she said slowly, "did you change the tea brand or something?" I let out a gentle laugh. "Oh, sweetheart, you know I wouldn't dare. You're the one who buys it." Her lips twitched. "Right. I guess I forgot." But she hadn't. Not really. I could see the thought blooming in her mind, the same thought that had bloomed in mine weeks ago. Something's wrong. By evening, Jack was lying on the couch, sweating, moaning softly. Emily hovered over him, restless. I sat in my chair across from them, knitting, counting stitches. "Grandma," Emily said finally, "could you maybe call your doctor? Ask him to come check us, too?" "Oh dear," I said. "He's very busy these days. Besides, I doubt he'd want to come here after what happened with my tea." Emily froze. "Your tea?" I looked up, eyes wide and innocent. "Yes, remember how sick I was getting? I asked Dr. Reeves to test it. He said it had traces of... what was it again? Ah, yes, arsenic." Silence filled the room, thick as fog. Emily's lips parted, but no sound came out. Jack sat up, pale as chalk. What do you mean, arsenic?" I set my knitting aside and folded my hands. "Don't worry, I'm perfectly fine now. I stopped drinking it, and I made sure to keep all the evidence. The doctor said it was quite an unusual case." They were both staring at me now. I could almost hear their hearts pounding. Emily's voice shook. "You kept the tea?" "Oh, yes," I said. "In a jar, with dates, labeled and everything. You see, in my nursing days, we were taught that poisoners make the same mistake. They think their victims are too weak to notice." Jack stood up abruptly, swaying. "This is insane. You're accusing us—" "Am I?" I said softly. "Did I say your names?" He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Emily reached for his arm. "Jack, let's just talk to her tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" I echoed, smiling faintly. If there is one. That night, they locked their bedroom door. I could hear them arguing through the thin walls. Panic has a particular rhythm. Fast, uneven, desperate. I listened to it like a lullaby. By morning, Jack was too weak to stand. Emily called an ambulance, her voice breaking. "He's not breathing right! Please hurry!" The paramedics arrived, young men in blue uniforms rushing past me with their equipment. One of them glanced at me kindly. "We'll take care of him, ma'am." "I know you will," I said, my voice calm as still water. As they carried Jack out on the stretcher, Emily followed, trembling. At the door, she turned to me, her face white as porcelain. "Grandma, did you do this?" I met her eyes steady and unblinking. "No, dear, I didn't do anything you didn't teach me." When the door closed behind them, the house fell silent again. The clock ticked softly. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a fresh cup of tea, and sat by the window. The garden looked beautiful in the morning light. Calm, innocent, unknowing. For the first time in weeks, I tasted the tea without fear. It was sweet, just the way I liked it. And as I watched the ambulance drive away, I whispered into the steam, "Justice is a slow brew, my darlings, but it always serves itself hot." The police came that same afternoon. 2 officers, young enough to be my grandchildren, stood awkwardly on the porch like schoolboys waiting to deliver bad news. One of them held his hat in his hands. "Mrs. Johnson?" he asked gently. "We'd like to ask you a few questions about your grandson, Jack Taylor." I nodded, stepping aside. "Of course. Come in, officers. I've just made tea." Their eyes flickered. Maybe it was my tone. Maybe it was the mention of tea. But they followed me in. The living room still smelled of antiseptic from the paramedics, and Jack's blanket lay crumpled on the couch. I didn't touch it. I wanted them to see it exactly as it was. "Please," I said, gesturing to the chairs. "I'm sure you're doing your best. How is he?" The taller officer cleared his throat. "He's stable now, ma'am. They're running tests at the hospital." "Oh, thank heavens," I said, pressing my hand to my chest. "Poor boy. He looked so pale this morning." The younger one, all crisp edges and suspicion, glanced around the room. "We were told you've also been unwell recently?" "Yes," I said, smiling faintly. "I thought it was age catching up with me. Turns out it wasn't." He raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Meaning," I said softly, "that my doctor found arsenic in my tea a few weeks ago." Both men froze. The shorter one pulled out a notebook. "Arsenic, you say? Do you have proof of that?" "I do," I said, standing. I opened the cupboard and took out the small jar I'd hidden there, sealed tight with a label. "This is a sample I kept. My doctor has the test results. You can call him. Dr. Reeves. He'll confirm it." The officer took the jar with gloved hands, his expression unreadable. "And do you have any idea who might have been responsible?" I looked at him for a long moment, letting my face soften into confusion. "Oh, I don't know, dear. It could have been contamination, or maybe I made a mistake myself. I've been so forgetful lately." That was the first lie I told the police, and the most important. Because here's the thing about being old. People expect you to be confused. They think your memory leaks like a cracked faucet, that you lose your grasp on truth. It's a dangerous assumption. It makes them underestimate you. The tall officer nodded sympathetically. "We'll look into it, Mrs. Johnson. You've been through a lot. Maybe you should have someone stay with you for a few days." "Oh, that's kind of you," I said, smiling. "But I've lived alone most of my life. I'll manage." When they left, I watched their car disappear down the road, then went back to my chair. The house was quiet again, the kind of quiet that hums in your ears after too much noise. That evening, Emily came back from the hospital. She looked smaller somehow, her perfect hair in disarray, mascara smudged. She stood in the doorway, trembling. "They think it's food poisoning," she said. "They're running more tests." "Oh dear," I said. "You poor things. I warned you about those takeout places." Her lips quivered. "The police came here, didn't they?" "Yes. Such nice young men." I patted the chair beside me. "Sit down, Emily. You look exhausted." She hesitated, then sat. Her eyes darted around the room, landing on the tea set. "You didn't tell them anything, did you?" I tilted my head. "Tell them what?" She swallowed. About the tea." "Ah," I smiled slowly. "You mean the tea that made me sick? Or the tea you've been drinking all week?" She went still, absolutely still. The kind of stillness that comes when a person realizes the floor has just vanished beneath them. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered. "Of course you don't," I said. "It's all so confusing, isn't it? Who poured what? Who handed which cup? Memory's a tricky thing at my age." She stood abruptly. "You're insane," she said. "You've lost it." "Perhaps." I picked up my knitting again. "Or perhaps I've simply found it." She stormed out of the room, muttering something about lawyers, but her footsteps faltered halfway up the stairs. The dizziness had returned. I heard her gasp, then the thud of someone hitting the wall. I waited a moment, counted to 10, then went to check. Emily was sitting on the steps, pale as paper, clutching the railing. "It's happening to me, too," she whispered. "Grandma, please, call an ambulance." I looked down at her, my hands folded neatly in front of me. "I already did, dear," I said softly. "For Jack. I'm sure they'll send another." Her eyes widened. You poisoned us." "No," I said, kneeling slowly so our faces were level. "I taught you a lesson you'll never forget. That's different." "You'll go to prison," she hissed. "Maybe, but at least I'll go with a clear conscience." I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You see, Emily, I didn't want to hurt you. I only wanted you to feel what you gave me. Helplessness, fear, that slow fading of life. But don't worry. I made sure the dose was light. You'll live." She stared at me, trembling. "Why?" "Because someone needs to remember the truth, and I want that someone to be you." The ambulance lights painted the walls red again. The neighbors peeked through curtains, whispering. The officers returned, the same two from before. "Another one?" the tall one said, frowning. "I don't know what's happening to them," I said, my voice shaking just enough. "I gave them the same dinner I ate myself." And it was true. I had eaten it, just not the same portion. They took Emily away on a stretcher, her eyes wide and glassy, fixed on me. I gave her a small wave. "Get well soon, dear," I called after her. "We'll have tea when you're back." When the sirens faded, I sat at the kitchen table again, the ticking clock filling the silence. On the counter lay the empty sugar jar, the one I'd prepared myself. I picked it up, rinsed it, and placed it carefully back on the shelf. In the quiet of that moment, I felt my husband's presence beside me, the way I always do when justice has been served. I whispered, "You see, love? They thought they could poison an old woman's will to live. But some hearts don't die so easily." The phone rang later that night. Dr. Reeves. "I heard about Jack and Emily," he said carefully. "The hospital's asking questions. Should I be concerned?" "Not at all, doctor," I said, watching the moonlight slide across the table. "Everything's in order. The police have the jar, your report, my statement. There's nothing to hide." He hesitated. "You're sure?" "Oh, quite sure," I said. "They'll find exactly what they need to. The rest, well, that's between God and me." When I hung up, I poured myself another cup of tea. Fresh, fragrant, perfectly safe. The steam curled around my face like forgiveness. Outside, the street was silent again. No sirens, no whispers, just the soft hum of a night that belonged, finally, to me. And as I took that first calm sip, I smiled, because even poison can be purified if you boil it long enough. They came back 2 days later. Not the polite young officers from before. This time it was a detective, older, sharper, the kind who'd seen too many lies dressed up as grief. His name was Detective Harlan, and he didn't bother smiling. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, stepping into my kitchen like he already owned the place. "We're following up on your grandchildren's hospital reports. Both are recovering, thank God. but there are questions that need answering. I poured him tea anyway. Old habits. Of course, detective. Milk? Sugar? He watched the cup as though it were a live grenade. No, ma'am. Just answers. I sat across from him, hands folded neatly on the table. You said they're recovering? Yes, ma'am, but the doctors found something unusual in their systems. I nodded slowly, feigning confusion. Oh dear, do they think it's contagious? Arsenic, he said flatly. Low doses, consistent over several days. Same pattern your doctor reported when you were tested. Only difference is, you seem to have stopped getting sick right around the time they started. I let out a soft gasp, pressing a trembling hand to my mouth. You don't think I... Oh, detective, that's terrible. His eyes narrowed. I think it's a strange coincidence. You poisoned, then them. Same substance, same house. I gave him my best innocent smile, the one that used to get me out of speeding tickets 50 years ago. Life's full of strange coincidences, detective. Sometimes they're lessons from God. He didn't smile. He just opened a small notebook. You said earlier you'd saved a sample of the tea that made you sick. Our lab confirmed it was arsenic. Your doctor corroborated that, but there's a problem. I tilted my head. Oh? The fingerprints on the jar weren't yours, ma'am. They were Emily's. I sat back, eyes wide, lips parting just enough to look shocked. Emily's? Oh, that poor girl. She must have touched it when she was cleaning up after me. She's always been so helpful. Harlan's pen hovered over the paper. You sure about that? I'm sure of what I saw, I said softly, and what I didn't. I didn't see her pour my tea. I didn't see her put anything in it. But, well, if you're asking whether I trust her. I let the sentence hang there, trembling just enough to make his eyes flicker with pity. You'd be surprised how easily pity becomes belief. After he left, I sat in the quiet and waited. The news came 2 nights later. The police were opening an investigation. Emily and Jack were both considered suspects in a potential poisoning case. They called it mutual contamination, said it might have been an accident or something domestic gone wrong. I just nodded when the officers came to update me. I looked small, tired, grateful, the perfect victim. Inside, I felt calm, almost serene. I'd played my part, and the stage was resetting exactly as planned. Emily called me from the hospital the next morning. Her voice was hoarse, trembling. Grandma, they think we did it. The police, they think we poisoned you. Did you? I asked quietly. Of course not, she sobbed. We were trying to help you. You were so sick. Jack thought maybe something in the kitchen was contaminated. I let her talk. The words poured out like rain on a tin roof, loud, messy, meaningless. When she finally ran out of excuses, I said softly, Then you have nothing to worry about, dear. Truth always comes out in the end. And I hung up. Later that day, I called my lawyer, Mr. Barrett. He'd been with me for decades, handled our house, our wills, all the paperwork that made life predictable. Josephine, he said, I heard about your grandchildren. You holding up? Oh, I'm fine, I said, but I'd like to make some changes to my estate plan. He hesitated. Now? So soon? Yes, I said firmly. I want my house transferred into a community trust. I'll leave the rest to charity. A scholarship fund for nursing students, people who still believe in saving lives instead of taking them. There was a long pause. You sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything, I said. By the end of the week, the paperwork was signed. Everything I'd built, every penny they'd tried to steal, was now legally out of their reach. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Thank you. That night, I watched the evening news. A small segment caught my eye. Young couple under investigation for suspected poisoning of elderly relative. No names mentioned, but the footage outside my house said enough. Neighbors looked shocked, clutching their dogs, shaking their heads. One woman told the reporter, "She's such a kind old lady, always brings cookies at Christmas. Who'd want to hurt her?" Who indeed? I turned off the TV and sat in the dark for a while, listening to the rain. The sound reminded me of my husband again, of his laughter when we used to dance in the kitchen barefoot. "You've got a mean streak, Joe," he once told me, half joking. "You hide it behind all that kindness." I smiled at the memory. "You were right, love, but sometimes it's the only thing that keeps you alive." A week later, Detective Harlan came back. No hat this time, just rainwater on his coat and weariness in his eyes. "They're dropping the charges," he said. "Lab results are inconclusive. Seems the contamination could have come from the old plumbing, trace elements in the pipes." I widened my eyes. "The pipes? My goodness." He nodded. "You should probably get the water system replaced." "I'll do that," I said. "Thank you, Detective." He studied me for a moment, as if trying to decide whether to dig deeper. Then he sighed and tipped his head. "You take care of yourself, ma'am." "I always do," I said, smiling. After he left, I closed the door and exhaled slowly. My heart didn't race this time. No fear, no guilt, no second thoughts. Just peace. Outside, the garden gleamed after the rain. The earth smelled rich and alive, and the geraniums I'd once poisoned by accident had started blooming again, red, defiant, impossible to kill. I stood there in the doorway, watching the world return to order, and whispered, "Justice doesn't always need witnesses. Sometimes it just needs time." And as the last drops fell from the roof, I thought of Emily and Jack, both alive, both broken, both far away now, and I felt no hatred, only a quiet satisfaction that they'd never forget the taste of what they'd tried to serve me. Tomorrow I'd bake cookies for the neighbors again, because life goes on, and so do I. 6 months. That's how long it took for silence to start feeling like peace again. Every morning I still brewed tea, the safe kind, with chamomile and honey, and watched the sunrise creep through the same kitchen window where everything had happened. The police had closed the file, the neighbors had stopped whispering, the papers called it a tragic misunderstanding. I called it closure. My house was mine again. The trust had gone through. The charity fund for nursing students was already receiving applications. The Josephine Johnson Scholarship, they named it. Funny how immortality sneaks in through kindness rather than vengeance. Some nights I still heard echoes, Emily's sobs, Jack's groans, but they didn't haunt me anymore. They were reminders, not ghosts. I told myself they were still alive somewhere, learning humility in the way only shame can teach. Then one Tuesday morning, a letter arrived. The envelope was cream-colored, handwritten, no return address. The handwriting was careful but familiar, that childish tilt of letters I used to scold Emily for when she wrote me birthday cards. My stomach clenched as I opened it. "Dear Grandma, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know we understand now. The police cleared us, but people don't forget. We lost everything. Jobs, friends, our reputation. We moved to another state. Jack still has health issues. I can't sleep without nightmares. But I've stopped lying to myself. We deserved it. I found your scholarship online. It's beautiful. You're helping people live. I think that's what you were trying to teach us, wasn't it? Emily." I read it twice. My hands didn't tremble. There was no triumph, no anger, only a strange warmth blooming in my chest. She understood. Maybe not everything, but enough. That night, I sat by the fire, letter in my lap, thinking about the strange way justice moves. Slow, silent, inevitable, like water carving stone. I hadn't meant to destroy them completely. I'd only wanted them to see me as human again. And maybe they finally did. Still, guilt has its own flavor. It lingers like metal on the tongue. As I watched the flames, a faint scent drifted from the teapot on the stove. Something floral? Delicate? My neighbor Clara had stopped by earlier with a gift. Herbal tea from her garden. She said it would help me sleep. I smiled, amused by the symmetry of it all. I poured a cup, lifted it to my lips, then paused. Old habits die hard. I set the cup down and reached for the small silver spoon on the counter. I stirred once, twice, then took a drop and let it fall into the same kind of test strip I hadn't touched in months. The paper stayed white, clean. I laughed quietly to myself. You'll have to try harder than that, Fate. Then I drank it, all of it, and leaned back in my chair, feeling the warmth seep through my chest. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like a whisper. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to hurt me, trick me, or take from me. I had nothing left to lose, and everything left to give. I folded Emily's letter neatly, placed it beside my husband's photograph, and whispered to them both, "It's done." The clock ticked softly, steady and kind. Justice had finished her cup, and so had I. And for once, the tea was just tea. The end. If you liked the story, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and write in the comments if something like this has ever happened in your life. I'd love to hear your stories. Thank you for watching.